Good afternoon and greetings from Western Kentucky University. Welcome to the Midwestern Association of Graduate Schools MAGS Fall 2021 Signature Event. This event is being recorded and will be posted online. If you have any concerns, you may exit and not participate. My name is Ranjit Kudali, and I'm privileged to serve as Chair of MAGS and as Associate Provost for Research and Graduate Education. Today's event has two parts. I now kindly ask Dean Julie Masterson from Missouri State University to facilitate the first part of the event related to effective graduate mentoring. Dean Masterson.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to the MAGS 2021 Fall Signature Event. We are so excited to be able to present for you today effective graduate mentoring, evidence-based practices from IUPUI. Our speakers today, both from IUPUI, are Randall Roper, who is the Director of the Graduate Mentoring Center and Associate Professor of Genetics, and Janice Blum, who is the Vice Chancellor for Research and Graduate Education and Associate Dean of the University Graduate School. They have a really very exciting presentation for you. My job is to basically be the time bouncer. So we have until approximately 2:20-ish for the first part of the presentation from Randall and Janice, and then we're going to do breakouts. That'll take about 20 minutes. Then we'll come back and do brief reports and handle Q&A to the extent that time allows us. So I would encourage you, if you have questions or comments, to put them in chat, and Randall and Janice will be monitoring, as will I. And then I will come back on. I'll turn my camera back on, Randall and Janice, with about a minute or two left before we do breakout groups. And then Ranjit can instruct us on how to decide on breakout groups. We'll build in some time for that too, about how to choose. So without further ado, Drs. Roper and Blum from Indiana University, Purdue University in Indianapolis.
Thank you so much, Julie, and thanks to our colleagues in MAGS for inviting us to speak today. And Randall and I are delighted to tell you about effective graduate mentoring, the evidence-based practices we're using at IUPUI. If we could have the next slide, Randall. So in developing our graduate mentoring center at IUPUI, we took a look first at our campus. And while we offer a broad spectrum of degrees and programs, the majority of our graduate students in both doctoral and master's programs are enrolled in STEM, health and life sciences programs. And so we kept that in mind in developing our center. We also have a growing enrollment, and that's been consistent for probably the last 5 or 6 years, in students from underrepresented, first generation to college and marginalized groups. So we wanted to be aware of that in the programming. And that was also a key motivator, I have to say, for the mentoring center, the need to serve those students. We additionally have multiple federally funded grants, and many of those from NIH and NSF have requirements for graduate student mentoring, and that has become an increasingly important focus in federal funding agencies. And finally, our campus has a longstanding and ever-growing focus on diversity and inclusion. We're proud to note that we're one of the first in the nation to include in our promotion and tenure policies a category where faculty can include their work on diversity and inclusion as part of their tenure and promotion packet. So these are important. Thank you, Randall. The goals of the Mentoring Center at IUPUI, and hopefully if you have a center or are thinking about a center, these are important to identify. We wanted to provide resources and opportunities for both faculty and staff to strengthen their skills. We wanted to inform our faculty and staff about best practices in mentoring. We wanted to teach our graduate and professional students about mentoring. We wanted to foster our graduate and professional school, professional student, academic and career success. And we wanted to promote a greater understanding of diversity across our campus. And so these were central themes. In the next slide, please. We also strategized a lot about how to develop the center. We wanted to recognize and probably many of you have encountered instances where it's important to convey to our colleagues that proper mentoring is really essential. We knew that students wanted to recognize outstanding mentors, as did we, to kind of highlight these people and raise them up as champions and individuals that could help mentor their colleagues. We also wanted to provide a venue to share best practicing for mentoring, wanted to instruct in mentoring competencies, and a key back again to our focus on diversity inclusion, we wanted to address culturally aware mentoring in our mentoring center. Next slide. Randall?
So we started our center in at the beginning of 2018, and one of the first things that we did was we instituted an award for the IUPUI Outstanding Graduate Professional Student Mentor Award, and we've given this award so far four times. We invite nominations from faculty, staff, and students from across campus. The first year we did this, we had 70 nominations. This past year, Dr. Matt Allen received our award for Outstanding Graduate and Professional Student Mentoring. And you can just see by what this says about Dr. Allen, about what these mentees are saying about these outstanding mentors. Dr. Matt Allen persistently advocates and supports his mentees with their professional development and well-being at the core of his holistic mentoring approach. And we have seen this time and time again with our outstanding mentors. We've had mentors from the law school, we've had mentors from basic sciences, and just our students rave about the fantastic mentors that we've been able to identify. And we've used this as a launching off point to help spread these best practices throughout campus. So we used, to start talking about mentoring, we utilize the NRMN, so the National Research Mentoring Network, or it's also known as a CIMR, or Center for Improvement in Mentored Experiences and Research. And you can see the URLs at the bottom. So we went and we utilized their framework. And so I was fortunate enough to be trained in their entering mentoring program and became a facilitator to teach this entering mentoring program, or this level 1 training. And so we began by hosting a number of lunch and learn sessions, both for our graduate and professional students, as well as our faculty, concentrating on the core principles that were being taught by through this program from the NRMN or CIMR. And those principles are, and these are principles of mentoring: maintaining effective communication, aligning expectations, assessing understanding, addressing equity and inclusion, fostering independence, and promoting professional development. So we have provided a number of one-off sessions on these subjects, and then we at least 2 or 3 times a year, I facilitate this, and this has been co-facilitated by Etta Ward, who is on our research staff in the Office of Vice Chancellor for Research. And we facilitate this mentoring training for faculty and staff. And then during the summer, we also facilitate it for our graduate and professional students. And so here you can see this is one of our groups. This is pre-pandemic, one of our groups where we facilitated these mentoring dialogues that we call them. And we emphasized that this was a national program. These are nationally known entities. They're recognized by the NSF, by the NIH. And when the mentors complete this program, they get a certificate of completion, and we show them how they can put a line on their CV to show that they participated in this program, and it really means something. Another thing that we've done, as I mentioned, is we've also done this for our graduate and professional students. And we do this every summer. We sit down with them, and we're really teaching them how to be better mentors, as well as how to mentor up. What should they be expecting from their mentors? And we've seen a lot of success, especially as we've seen the faculty and their trainees take the same mentoring course, and so they're speaking the same language and have the same types of expectations. Another thing that we've done is we hold a monthly meeting for our graduate and professional students. So we call these our midday mentoring dialogues. We collaborate with a number of student organizations, our underrepresented professional and graduate student organization, our Preparing Future Faculty and Professionals program. We collaborate with them, and we just talk about different topics that are important or that we think would be important. And we ask our graduate students and professional students which topics they would like to talk about. So for instance, earlier this month, we had a session on how to choose a mentor. Later this week, we have a session on graduate student life hacks, where we have a number of seasoned graduate students that are giving their best advice on how to survive and thrive in graduate school. We've had programs on negotiation, networking, interviewing, a number of these topics that our graduate and professional students have found very useful. And in 2020, we actually won an award for the Outstanding Collaborative Program of the Year at IUPUI. And so we can see that this is making a difference in the lives of our graduate and professional students. We also have in our annual programming a program called Trailblazers and Innovators, where we invite someone from throughout the world who has been exceptional in mentoring, especially in mentoring underrepresented groups. This past year, of course, it was all online, and we had Dr. Ainsley Abraham, who is the director of the Southern Region Educational Board State Doctorals Program. This is a program that helps our underrepresented PhD students to complete their PhD and enter into the professoriate. And she had some fantastic recommendations for us on some ways to improve our mentoring, especially of underrepresented students, as well as how to recruit underrepresented faculty to our campus. And so this is a yearly program that we do, and it's just fantastic. As Janice mentioned, we have concentrated on culturally aware mentor training. We have brought the NRMN's program for culturally aware mentor training to our campus and had the support of most of the schools on campus, had their financial support because they thought this was important. We followed up with seminars from individuals on our own campus, a conversation about bias in mentorship, community mapping as a tool for developing culturally relevant pedagogy, and cultural humility. And so we followed up on this, and we are hoping to continue to develop these kinds of courses. And so these are some things that we're doing at our mentoring center to try to engage both our faculty, our staff, and our students in better mentoring practices. Janice?
Yes, thanks, Randall. So we're often asked, what is the secret sauce or the magic in our mentoring center? And I think one of the things we really emphasize to others is collaboration, and collaboration is really key. And that includes working with partners in our office as well as partners outside our institution. I've committed and working with Randall that all of the graduate office staff will help the mentoring center and provide key administrative support. So we help maintain the website, we help with purchasing, travel reservations, and we provide desk space for a graduate student assistant that works with the mentoring center within our graduate office. We also have collaborations, strong collaborations with several student groups. Up and Go is our diverse, underrepresented professional and graduate student organization. Preparing Future Faculty and Professionals program on our campus. Our student government, the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion on our campus, as well as at our university. Our Writing Center collaborates with us, and there's also a national mentoring symposia that we participate in. And we've also had invitations to speak at a number of meetings. So most of you know, despite hoping that if you are there, they will come. In graduate and professional programs, our students are busy. And so we provide a number of ways where we advertise or try to communicate what's going on and how students can avail of themselves of the various activities, as well as faculty and staff. So we have a website that's maintained in our office. We have a dedicated email. We have a monthly newsletter. We use Instagram, and that's part of the work of our graduate student assistant that's in the center. We have a graduate affairs committee where we communicate monthly all of the activities at the center, as well as other news that's to our associate deans for graduate programs. We communicate through the student organizations, and we also do presentations to departments. We'll offer to go and do a special tailored presentation on mentoring, as well as outreach to staff. And I want to emphasize that last point because many of you know, as I do, that staff are our unseen mentors, and they're often a comfort or the person who will connect with a graduate or professional student when they're struggling, or just on that day-to-day, say, how are you? Help perk the student up a little bit to get them through the challenges. So we definitely include staff. There's a quick question, Randall, I'll address. It says, please share staffing in the center. We have a director, which is Randall. We have the graduate student assistant, and they're the only two dedicated people in the center. But my assistant dean, Dr. Tabitha Hardy, puts a significant amount of work into helping Randall. As Randall mentioned, a lot of the presentations are co-facilitated by our assistant vice chancellor at award and those discussions with students. And our funding, the majority of the funding for the center comes from our IU president, Indiana University president. It was part of a diversity initiative, and they initially wanted one graduate mentoring center for all IU campuses, and then realized that was not sufficient. And so we now have a graduate mentoring center in Bloomington and at IUPUI in Indianapolis. And probably the funding I'm guesstimating is maybe $70,000, $80,000 a year to support the center. A lot of that goes towards programming and food and events. We're not having as much food and events, so we don't quite have to spend all those costs. But still, as Randall mentioned, we have invited speakers and certainly awards that we provide. So next slide, please, Randall.
So if you'd address this too, Janice, because I think there's a question that says, how did you get support to create the mentoring center? I think that's an important question to answer.
Sure. This initially, as I said, was part of a plan under our diversity efforts from the president, but having that big idea alone is never enough. And so we really had to reach out with deans and talk a lot to deans about the need and communicate the need. We definitely worked with graduate program advisors. This is supported from the campus administration on down, the chancellor, all of the diversity office. We had to bring a lot of people on board and emphasize that graduate students are as important as undergraduate students. And what we've seen miraculously, and I think we're very proud of this, Randall in particular, is that the mentoring we do translates across many different groups. So faculty will take some lessons they learn from mentoring graduate students and apply that to undergraduates, as well as mentoring their colleagues, other faculty. I think Bill's asking me about faculty participation. We'll get to that, Bill. We'll show you some numbers. If I had to estimate, Randall, I'd say maybe we're at 20%. I don't know, faculty participating. Yeah. So let's move on to the next slide real quickly.
So you wonder, are people really benefiting from this? And these are evaluations. So we do an evaluation after all of our programs, and you can begin to see what people are saying about this type of programming. I really enjoyed this training, got more out of it than I was expecting. The last one, initially I was feeling stagnant in my career and I questioned my ability to be a strong mentor. After my participation in the workshop, I walked away confident and ready to take on more opportunities. I'm excited to share my knowledge, and I'm committed and open to further developing my knowledge and skills. So those are from faculty. This is from student training, novel insights, practical applications, good takeaways, relevant topic, very helpful information, concrete examples of what it looks like in the real world. And so I think we're really reaching our faculty and staff. And like Janice mentioned, the number of faculty and staff that have been engaged has been really good. So we started the center in 2018. 540 staff, faculty, and students were engaged in our mentoring programs. And we basically had this number, 2019, you can see almost 900. 2020, we dropped a little bit. The pandemic dropped us a little bit. And then 2021, we're still on a good course. So we're still engaging a lot of faculty and graduate and professional students, as well as staff in our mentoring programs. Just like all of you, we had to shift online during the pandemic. And so we shifted all of our programming online. We conducted all of our training. We had our midday mentoring dialogues, our Trailblazers and Innovators online. And we learned that mentoring and teaching about mentoring is difficult online. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. Janice?
And just real quickly, these are some of the current plans and future plans. I know we're right at the point to switch. We've developed some tools to look at trauma, and also we're very interested in working with colleagues who are looking at approaches to address sexual harassment. And we continue to get inquiries from colleagues asking us to participate in writing grant applications, and they want information on the center for grant applications. So it's been really productive overall. I think that's an approach you might use with your leadership, that this helps students, but it also connects back to research and training grants. So these are some of the questions we hope that will be discussed, and these are our observations. Certainly, more and more people are getting to know about our mentoring center. We have continually good attendance at our events. We now see we're trending more towards smaller and niche groups. Initially, it was broad faculty distribution. Now we'll have a department specifically reach out. And then again, collaborations with those writing grants. And then overall, we're really establishing, I think, a culture of mentoring excellence, and it's translating to faculty, students, staff. It's a much more inclusive environment on our campus, and I think the mentoring centers contributed to that. Next slide. So these are four of the topics that we would like you to think about and that will be discussed in the next session in breakout groups. So how do I learn more about how to be an inclusive mentor? How do I best mentor graduate students when they're online? I'm mentoring graduate and undergraduate students. Is that the same? And how do I get mentors that need mentor training to participate in programs?
Well, thank you so much. This was great. We are going to move into breakouts, and we will take about 15 minutes or so for breakouts. And Ranjit, if you can come on and give people instructions for, do they get to choose the breakout group, or have we randomly assigned them to breakout groups?
Oh, thank you, Julie. As Janice mentioned, we have 4 breakouts rooms. The first is approaches to inclusive mentoring, and we will have a reporter who will report back and facilitate discussions. The second one is breakout session is mentoring online for graduate students. Carrie and Hazlett will facilitate that. The third breakout session is mentoring graduate and undergraduate students. What are the differences? What are the similarities? And Dr. Algerian Hart will facilitate that. The fourth breakout session is addressing gaps in mentoring, and Dr. Carrie Wilkes will facilitate this. I will open all the rooms, and you are able, I think you should be able to join any of those breakout sessions. You have 4 choices and you should be able to join. We have not assigned you to any of them. So let me know if you see something differently.
Well, it looks like everybody is back, has come back. Some of you may or may not have been in the middle of the sentence, and I pulled you out of that group and threw you into another group. So that could have been fun, trying to keep things balanced. But so welcome back. We're going to take just a few minutes to have folks report out, and then if we have some time for Q&A at the end, we will do that. We have a pretty hard 3 o'clock stop time because we're moving to the next part to get to hear about our thesis winners. So I'm going to do something crazy and just go in reverse order. So reporters, about a minute or so, hit the high points. Carrie, can you tell us about addressing gaps in mentoring?
Sure. Addressing gaps in mentoring, otherwise known as help. My faculty member is a jerk. What do we do about it? Which of course everyone smiled about, which in and of itself is depressing. But we wondered if we needed to do this before it was needed. So maybe it should be mandatory to work with graduate students. We had a really interesting point at the beginning about the use of staff. We don't have that at WSU, but are we utilizing our staff appropriately, or do we only talk about faculty? And how do we welcome staff at the table? And how do we give them the training that they might want to be more effective at advising or mentoring? And then one of the talking points that I thought was really fascinating came from an example that Randall supplied, which was, the whole, how do we incentivize this, right? Faculty are stretched too thin. And, it's grants and publications that always count at the end of the day, as we know. And Randall used his own personal experience of his grant activity has quadrupled since implementing this. And so I can't really think of a better incentive than a quadruple rate of increase. I think that's about it from our group.
Great, thanks, Carrie. Again, I'm just randomly doing this. Carrie Ann, what about mentoring online for grad students?
So we had some folks who are new to mentoring, and we also had Kirsten Tollefson, who at MSU has a little bit more effort that's been initialized there around mentoring and some of the things that they've done online, including doing some MOOCs, some videos, and being able to do more than just hand people text and say, hey, read through this case or this role play, that have been very helpful. They also have mentoring liaisons in each college that help facilitate communication between their central mentoring efforts and the colleges. But one of the questions that came up, or one of the issues came up, is it's not just about mentoring online, because it could be mentoring online for on-campus students, could also be mentoring online for online students, and that those may be different efforts, different needs. We were fortunate to have Janice in the group with us, and she described their efforts to mentor different types of students, some work with affiliation groups, that they're still using Zoom and that there is benefit to that, but also keeping in mind that some of those on-campus draws are helpful as well. I think we point back to food as being the draw for graduate students, but convenience of being able to connect online is also a draw. So.
Thanks, Carrie Ann. Algerian, your group?
Yes, I want to first off thank the group for being open and transparent with their thoughts. One of the things is first discussion, because obviously it was undergraduate and graduate, the traditionalism and how we tend to mimic what a previous mentor had done, and we view that as what true mentorship is about. And in fact, that doesn't allow for the growth and truly to engage with today's student and their needs. And so some of that conversation evolved into coming up with pathways for training and what that training is like, because mentorship is not always something that is a learned behavior. There needs to be some level of engagement and a better understanding to assist faculty for those that do have that capability and desire to mentor, and employing training for that. One thing that was brought up by one of the individuals was, from the undergraduate perspective, going from high school all the way through your undergraduate experience, you're pretty much told what those next steps are. And as you evolve into that graduate student, you get to a point to where you have a choice. At least on paper, you have a choice, right? And so some of that is about what mentorship does to cultivate that choice. And then moving into, and I will say Benny, because he's in the throngs of the doctoral process, and he discussed that mentorship from undergraduate even all the way through his graduate experience has been seminal and instrumental to his success. And I go to that next part here, where that isolation coming out of a pandemic, and faculty and others checking in on students and their well-being and their mental health, and displaying a level of empathy, but not forgetting in this mentorship paradigm that oftentimes we forget that we need some assistance. So some have felt isolated and alienated, and try to figure out, how do I do that and maintain being an effective mentor? And that's about it.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to ask Ranjit to cover what his breakout group did in just a moment, but I want to personally thank Randall and Janice for a wonderful presentation, thought-provoking conversation. And I feel like, I'm the coach that's going, get out of the blocks, hurry, 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 because we had to have a lot of content crammed into a very short amount of time. But Carrie's put this in the chat that this will be available on our YouTube channel. And so you can access it, mull about it a little bit more. But Ranjit, you're going to do double duty. Tell us about your breakout group, and then lead us to the next section of our time today.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Julie. We had a relatively small group. And what struck some of us, the first thing was the intentionality and the focus on diversity and inclusion when the Graduate Mentoring Center vision was created. So being very inclusive and mindful of the diversity of graduate students and focusing on diversity and inclusion while planning for the development of the center, we felt was something that was striking and really, really remarkable. Comments were also made about many of the activities, such as the monthly meeting, the midday mentoring dialogues, the trailblazers and innovators. The culturally aware mentor training program was also seen as something really very powerful and helpful. And the inclusion of alum as well, and all these elements and workshops and meetings, and bringing together faculty and staff and students to help them in the success of students was seen as something as positive attributes. One of the things I struggle, and Julie, you had mentioned, is how do we mentor faculty? We are trained in the discipline, right? As a chemist, as a speech language pathologist, etc. We do not receive formal training in mentoring. And so the use of national bodies like CIMER, etc., and using those resources and reaching out to them and being formally trained and bringing those ideas and evidence-based practices to our respective campuses is a way for each of us to be educated, to keep up with the times, and to inform and engage with our students. So that'll be my short spiel, Julie. Perhaps Janice and Randall, we have plenty of time. Perhaps they could take a couple of minutes each and share last few minutes thoughts, maybe.
I guess I will go, and I will just say, the Mentoring Center has really been fantastic, and it's been a great experience for me. I run a research lab. I teach classes, and I have the Mentoring Center. When I walk in to talk about mentoring, and I tell them I have 6 graduate students and 12 undergraduate students that I mentor in my lab, I think I get people's ears, and so it's a real thing for me. And I tell people that I tried things out on my students, and if something works, I'm going to share it with people. So it's just been very fulfilling to me. I really like serving in this role. I really like working with Janice and the graduate school, because they've just been so wanting this to go forward. And I think that's really been a success at our university, is the graduate office just saying, we want this, we need this, and their support. And so I can't give enough kudos to Janice and her group about seeing this vision and providing the structure for it. Janice?
Thanks, Randall. And again, we had the largest number of students graduate this summer ever from our campus. So in the graduate professional degree program. So I'm hoping that's partly a testament to helping our students through the mentoring center get through this last year and a half with COVID. But additionally, I want to encourage our colleagues not to be very intimidated by the cost. You really can start out, if you can get a few interested faculty members, the funding a student to help them, it's really not that high of a cost. And oftentimes your colleagues really do want this. And we've been amazed at the turnout of faculty members from all across the campus, the professional programs. Every school, almost every department has had at least one, if not more, faculty members. And even the staff are thrilled to be a part of this. They're always interested in helping students. And so having that formal training boosts their integration and their sense of being a part of supporting our students. So it's been very beneficial for us. And I think, I hope you'll all try to investigate looking at developing a center, or at least bringing some center programming from national organizations. Reach out to Randall and I. We have lots of other colleagues that have great mentoring programs around the country as well. So thanks for allowing us to present today.
Julie, we are doing good with time. We have 5 minutes before the top of the hour, so perhaps we could take a question or two. Do we have questions from the audience to Janice or Randall? Julie, any final thoughts as a facilitator, moderator, before we start our next event?
Well, again, this was so helpful for me because I appreciate the multifaceted approach that you have taken to mentoring. I was struck by the comment that sometimes you learn about how to be an effective mentor because of seeing a colleague do something, or maybe something that was done with you that you don't want to do, or you may want to do. And that multi-levels, I think, is important. I told my breakout group that some of these things really continue to be very challenging for me and difficult for me. And I have some learning to do. So I appreciate this resource, and it's very comforting for me to know that there are these professional associations, these professional resources that I can tap into. So again, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for your willingness to do this quickly. Again, we're going to post this information for you so you'll have a little bit more time to mull about it. Janice, Randall, this was really, really helpful. And I personally would just like to come to Indianapolis and sit at your feet for a little while and learn a little bit more about all of these areas. But it was a great start today. So now I think we're about ready to switch over and hear about our thesis winner. So I'm excited about that too. Thanks again.
Wonderful. So please join me in giving a round of applause to Drs. Randall Roper and Drs. Janice Blum. I'm also grateful to Drs. Julie Masterson, Dr. Carrie Ann Haslett, Dr. Algerian Hort, and Dr. Kerry Wilkes for facilitating the breakout sessions. We now move to the second part of today's event, honoring two exceptionally and talented graduate students. And joining with me is Dr. Peter DeHart, Associate Vice Chancellor for Graduate Studies at University of Wisconsin, Green Bay, to facilitate this session. Dr. DeHart, the Zoom session is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Crudele. I appreciate it, and thank you all for being here today. I wish we had an opportunity in person. We will in the future to celebrate the great achievements of our graduate students and the work that they did. So the first thing that I wanted to say is also thank you to Denise Collins, who is a co-chair of the Distinguished Thesis Award Committee, who's unable to be here today, but she sends her best wishes to the winners. and her support for this event as well. Also, thanks to ProQuest, and ProQuest is the sponsor for the Distinguished Thesis Award today. Just a quick insider note about this, as we were wrangling and trying to figure out reviews of different theses for these two categories in this past year, the social and behavioral sciences category, as well as mathematics, physical sciences, and engineering. Having personally read through every single title, every single abstract, and looking at all the materials of these, wow, what an amazing group of submissions from across the Midwest, across many different types of institutions, large and small, in many different structures of their departments and categories, and just the amazing research that has taken place and the write-up of that research itself in the actual theses. So this award is, it's something actually. It is, I would say, to the winners that are here today, please know that you are among probably the best of the best. They were all kind of filtered and chosen from the various universities, and this was really some amazing work. A few of the things that stood out to me were, particularly with the winners today, the clarity of thought and the transmission of that thought in the writing of the thesis. And I think that's very, very important when we're trying to translate the important research developments that we do to broader audiences, right? Helping us make a more informed public. So without further ado, I'll announce the award winners, and then I'll allow them to just tell us a little bit about their work very briefly, and as well as their experiences as a graduate student, if they don't mind. So the first category is for that of the social and behavioral sciences category. And this individual comes from the great state of Wisconsin, at least for the graduate work. I'm a little bit biased here myself, I know. And Benny Witkowski, who focused on sociology, wrote a thesis titled "The Local Periphery, Small Cities and the Politics of Exclusion." So Benny, congratulations. And if you don't mind just saying a few words, a little bit about the work and a little bit about your experience as a graduate student, I think that'd be great.
Great. Well, thank you so much for introducing me, and thank you so much for the award. My master's thesis, which I'm currently kind of expanding and deepening into my PhD dissertation, looks at local politics and local political inequality, particularly in small cities in Wisconsin. I am also from Wisconsin, so I appreciate the Wisconsin focus here. And I look at sort of participation in local government, who votes, who goes to meetings, how people feel their voices are being heard or not being heard in local politics, and then the ways that state and national politicians are able to sort of take advantage of longstanding patterns of inequality and exclusion in local government. So that's the research. I'm working now on expanding it and particularly focusing on the way that partisan politics either does or doesn't interact with nonpartisan local politics, and sort of that gap there. Graduate school has been great. I don't know what else to say about this research it's ethnographic research and historical research, so it takes a really long time. And so having the support of an advisor and a mentor and a department through that process, being able to teach through that process, and be financially supported has been super important to me. And yeah, I don't know what else you're looking for, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Benny. I can tell you, I personally appreciated reading your work, given the unique political nature in the state of Wisconsin and how important it is to look at politics at a local level. And we experience it from the University of Wisconsin system all the way down to local government functioning. So we're going through a very unique atmosphere in Wisconsin, is unlike many other states in the country in terms of the I said unique many times, but the unique political nature of the state. So thank you for your work and for being here today. And the next category, so for mathematics, physical sciences, and engineering category, our winner is Richard Gross. And Richard Gross hails from Grand Valley State University. And his thesis was on algorithm for geodetic positioning based on angle of arrival of automatic dependent surveillance broadcasts. I have to also fully admit that I needed to lean on experts for this one because this is nowhere near my, my field of expertise. But I want to congratulate Richard and invite him to say a few words about his experience as a graduate student as well as his project.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It is an honor to be here, and Benny's given me a tough act to follow here, so I'll see if I can hold up to his standard. My thesis is based on the proliferation of ADS-B capable aircraft, and ADS-B is a new technology that has recently been mandated by the government, where commercial airliners are required to transmit their present position, their velocity, their heading about once a second, so that other aircraft in the area and air traffic controllers can have more precise positioning information on the air traffic. Well, I had an idea that all of these transmissions that are becoming regulatory standard now could possibly be used in some way as signals of opportunity to help an aircraft that maybe has a GPS failure or is in some other GPS denied environment to still determine its position relatively accurately. So what we do is essentially triangulate position of a host aircraft based on the angle of arrival of multiple ADS-B signals. And then given enough signals from enough aircraft that have accurate positioning, we can determine a fairly accurate position of our own aircraft. It's relatively simple in concept and turned out to be quite complex in practice. So we never actually, or I never actually took this to fruition. It was all done through simulation. But I think I was able to prove that the concept is viable, and there's still some technological hurdles involved in bringing that sort of a solution to market, but it's feasible. That's really what it boils down to. My experience as a student is probably quite a bit different than everyone else's. Without going into too much gory detail, I entered the Marine Corps right out of high school, and I spent 8.5 years as a United States Marine. And by the time I left the Marine Corps, I was married with a family and had to support a family while working full time and trying to close the gap in my education. So as a non-traditional student, I received an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, and then finally in April of 2019, my master's degree. And I've decided that at this point, I think my educational journey is about over. Not that I don't enjoy it. I do miss the learning, but I also have to be there for my family and the other obligations, and focusing a little more on my career. I'm now a senior engineer at GE Aviation here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I've been with GE since 2003. And they've fully supported my academic endeavors, and I've been able to grow in my professional career as I grew in my educational endeavors. Is there anything else that you'd like to ask? Anyone else have any questions that I could help answer?
I was just wondering, since Benny and Richard, since we talked about effective mentoring practices, if you could talk about your experiences regarding mentoring from your advisors and as a graduate student in general. Benny, you want to go first?
Sure. It's been very important to me to have sort of several mentors, to not be completely reliant on one advisor. I have an advisor that is excellent and has been really important in sort of not micromanaging my research, not sort of overseeing every single day-to-day aspect of my research, but asking very important questions and giving very important advice in sort of key moments to sort of shape the empirical analysis and theoretical framework of of my work, and that's been great. And then I've also it's been really important to me to work with him on some of that stuff, have another mentor who's been helped me learn how to teach and become a teacher, another mentor who's helped me think more about the public facing aspect of my work and how to write for a public audience. So it's just been that aspect of having a kind of team has been really critical to me.
So my experience is maybe a little different, again, as more of a non-traditional student. I don't know that I would categorize that I had much mentorship through my associate's and bachelor's degree program. Once I got into the master's program, I did get connected with Dr. Bain from Grand Valley State, and he had a background similar to mine and similar to the field that I was working in. And we made a good connection there, and he did a really nice job of helping to keep me on track. And as Benny said, ask the intelligent questions that make you think, rather than just trying to turn the crank and get you through the process. And that's kind of a double-edged sword, because sometimes you could get done a lot faster if you would just turn the crank and call good enough and move on with your life. But it's those open-ended questions that really lead to the discovery, and that's where I think a good mentor comes in. And in my professional experience, we throw the word mentor around kind of loosely. Everyone wants to sign up to mentor and help train the next generation, but the reality is it's very hard. It takes a commitment from both the mentor and the mentee, and it's often very easy to go into a mentoring relationship with guns a-blazing, if you will, and then have that wane out over time, because it is hard. It requires planning and staying in touch. And I think I could do better at it myself, and I've actually taken some notes from our breakout session that I may be trying to apply in my professional life. So thank you for that.
Thank you. We do have plenty of time, and if anyone in the audience have questions to Benny or Richard, this could be an opportune time. We have two outstanding students here who have benefited from effective mentoring and great advice and outstanding quality of product. And so I invite any of you to ask questions either through the chat box or use your audio feature, particularly to Benny and Richard.
Richard, if you don't mind me asking a quick follow-up, one of the things I noted from letters of support for your thesis submission was the balance of independence as well as reliance on maybe that professional advice from your advisor throughout your graduate work. I wonder if you can speak a little bit to how your life experience prior to that may have lent to or enhanced the independence, your courageousness maybe, and or the creativity in the project.
Well, there's a fine line between independence and stubbornness, I think. Part of it too had to do with early in my professional career, I had the privilege of working with an engineer who was on the cusp of retirement while I was just kind of entering the field. And he was very meticulous, very professional, and sort of set the standard and expectation for me. And so when I entered, this sort of academic research, I had in my mind what it meant to be a good engineer and to develop, a piece of quality work. And I strove for that. And there is a bit of stubbornness there, because Dr. Bain kind of got to the point where he was encouraging me to finish, and I didn't think I was quite right yet. So I extended a semester or two longer, maybe 3, but nobody's counting, to come up with a result that I would be proud of. And I try to apply that to a lot of things that I do. especially in my professional work. You know, I work in the aviation industry. We develop safety critical software. Not that all falls on my shoulders personally, but I'm a step in that safety critical chain, and I take that seriously. You know, there are a lot of checks and balances to try to make sure that we don't have safety escapes, but it takes everyone to have that right serious professional attitude, and that's what I tried to apply to the paper. Is I wanted it to be reflective of a professional engineer more than a student. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
So I'm just reading from the chat message from Dr. Roper. Benny and Richard, do you have any suggestions on how graduate students can overcome writing stupor and persisting to writing an excellent product as you both have done? Benny, you want to go first?
Sure. Writing stupor is a great phrase that I'm gonna have to think about. But my advisor and I have set up a kind of dynamic where he asks me to just send him a lot of writing, and not always stuff that he's gonna really read, right? It's so there are key moments where he has read sort of word for word every part of a paper and given me line by line edits, and that's been a huge help in making a final product. But that's also incredibly time consuming for him, and for me. But the other piece of it is just him saying, you know, like, by 2 weeks, I want you to send me another 10 pages, but I'm not gonna I'm not gonna read those 10 pages. I just want them in my inbox so that you keep having that kind of that benchmark to keep yourself moving. And that's been really important to kind of getting out of those roadblocks for me.
The roadblocks for me tend to come when I try to sit down and be too perfect. Quite often I sit down and think that I can write the final draft on draft 1, and then I'll get bogged down in the details. So I find just going back to the fundamentals of just writing down the main idea and then filling in the flowery verbiage later helps me overcome, you know, sort of that writing block. But it's a little bit different in engineering discipline too, because it's less about our thoughts and feelings and more about what we observed and how we got there. It's almost more of a framework that can be followed to present engineering STEM material. But you can still certainly get bogged down. And again, I just I find that even writing it poorly, but getting the main ideas, even in a bulletized list or in a sentence or two, and then filling it in later has helped me.
Dr. DeHart, do you have a question for Benny? Go ahead,
Yeah,
please.
Benny, yeah, I'll verbalize it. I know I wrote it in the chat, but I wonder, you know, so you mentioned you moved from your master's thesis, which is what this award is for, onto your PhD. Can you just talk a little bit about what are your career goals? Why did you decide to move on to a PhD, and how is that preparing you for your next step?
I really have fallen in love with teaching as having been able to teach throughout my my graduate work. I really have I love teaching and would love to continue teaching. And so my career goal at this point is hopefully some kind of academic job at a more teaching focused university or college. And so I've been doing this. My graduate work has helped me in sort of building a research agenda, hopefully building publications that can help me get an academic job, but also building up a record of teaching, and that can help me get the type of job I want. At the same time, I've also, again, the importance of kind of multiple mentors, been working with some other folks that do more community-based research, and have had a few opportunities to do sort of community-based public-facing research that is sort of an alternative career possibility for me that I've been trying to build up as you all know, the vagaries of trying to find an academic job.
Dr. DeHart, any final comments? Your committee has worked incredibly hard, and we are deeply grateful for the committee's hard work in sifting through these wonderful theses. And I remain grateful to you, Dr. DeHart, and Dr. Denise Collins. It's an onerous task, and also all the reviewers who reviewed the thesis and provided quality feedback.
Yeah, I think also, yeah, like you said, Ranjit, the credit also goes to everyone who sorted through all of these. Benny and Richard, so they're experts from all around the Midwest. We all kind of tapped our networks of folks in the field so that we were having people that were familiar with work to be able to rate things like the impact of the work, the quality of the writing relative to peers in those same areas. So credit goes to you. We're here to celebrate you today, but with a lot of appreciation to those that were able to review and support this. So congratulations, Richard and Benny, again. Great work.
Thank you, Dr. DeHart, for your help with the MAGS ProQuest Distinguished Thesis Award. And I'm also grateful to Dr. Denise Collins, who could not join with us. She has served as the chair of this important committee for several years, and we are grateful to her for her service, and also to Dr. DeHart for joining as a co-chair and identifying some of the exceptional work from our talented students. MAGS is also very thankful to ProQuest for their support. Ms. Julia Smith wants to extend her greetings and well wishes and congratulations to you, Benny, and to Richard. She is unable to join with us, but we have strong support from ProQuest, and without their sponsorship, we would not be able to award the monetary prize money. And so we remain grateful to ProQuest. Dear MAGS and WKU colleagues, thank you for joining with us and taking time to learn about effective mentoring practices. I remain grateful to Dr. Janice Blum and Dr. Randall Roper for sharing their experiences. Coincidentally, they had also talked about the same topic at the annual virtual meeting in spring, and we felt that this is an important topic for all of us to learn, be educated, and serve our students better. So I hope you enjoyed both these events, the first related to effective mentoring practices and the celebration of two exceptionally talented graduate students, Benny and Richard. So thank you again on behalf of the MAGS Executive Committee. We want to thank you for your support, and we hope to see you at a CGS annual meeting or the next annual conference that Dr. Kerry Wilkes will be chairing, I should say. So have a wonderful rest of your day, and so long from Bowling Green, Kentucky, your MAGS Chair, Ranjit.